Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Doomsday mom Vallow Daybell indicted for another death. Already charged in the murders of her 2 children, now accused in the murder of her former husband, Charles Vallow. And Bill Cosby is released from prison. Why the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned the disgraced comedian's conviction. Plus, Smallville actor Allison Mack is sentenced to 3 years in prison for her role in the sex cult NXIVM. And a grand jury to investigate the Surfside condo collapse. We ask the experts who can be held responsible. What options do surviving victims and family members have? The legal implications of the heartbreaking disaster. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. The death toll continues to rise in Surfside, Florida. And as search crews continue their efforts, more questions are being asked about the legal implications of the deadly condo collapse.
It is such painstaking, grueling work.
As crews remove more than 3 million pounds of debris, the Miami-Dade state attorney has announced a grand jury investigation into what may be the deadliest accidental building collapse in U.S. history. The mayor of Miami-Dade County pledging her support.
I will do, and my team will do everything possible to aid them in their efforts to continue that investigation.
Senior prosecutors are on the scene at the disaster site to collaborate with engineers and investigators. Dump trucks are removing rubble to an evidence debris collection site.
We're relocating it to a location where it'll be also collected, sift through, a catalog photograph for future investigative purposes.
But as the process continued, loved ones are searching for answers. A newly released email from April by the board of directors for the Champlain Towers shows residents were told that damage discovered in 2018 got significantly worse. The estimated cost of repairs had jumped from $9 million to $15 million. Individual condo owners were set to begin payments on July 1st. And the Miami Herald obtaining photos taken just 36 hours before the collapse of the pool equipment room, showing exposed rebar and wet floors. Shocking video captured the moments the building collapsed. The following day, the first lawsuit of what's expected to be many was filed. The class action suit against the building association seeks more than $5 million in damages, saying Champlain Towers failed to safeguard the lives and property of the residents. And as rescue efforts continue from day 7 into day 8, more than 200 people are working on the mound.
I can't emphasize enough, the dangers that we're encountering.
The Florida rain washing in as fires creep up in Surfside. So many questions, so few answers. Joining me now is condominium law attorney Kevin Herzl. Kevin, let's get jump right into it. Who can be sued, and how can the surviving victims and loved ones recover just some of their terrible losses?
That's a very interesting question, Brian. So thus far, the lawsuits, they've been pointed at the condo association. So one of the central issues that's going to come up here is whether or not there's insurance coverage. In these cases, it's debatable whether there's going to be insurance coverage for a building collapse. If there is no insurance coverage and the association is sued, the owners, the residents, the estates of these people would have to pay an assessment to do that. So in effect, these lawsuits, they may end up essentially suing themselves.
Interesting. Now, Kevin, this is far out of my wheelhouse as a public defender, but I know statute of limitations, the time frame in which a person can file a suit, this could prevent some people from filing claims against the condo, right?
Probably not against the condo, because their actions happened in the last couple of years with respect to the repairs. Certainly, there are other responsible parties, such as the developer, that the statute of limitations may long since have expired, depending on whether this was properly put together from the get-go. There may be issues with the city and the inspections. They told them that this property was okay, but they're protected by governmental immunity. Certainly depending on who provided what advice when with respect to the engineers, there may be issues there as well that are eventually going to be looked at here too.
Sounds like a lot of investigation as to who may be on the hook and who can get pulled in. Let's bring in co-host Terry Austin for more. Terry, what type of claims and arguments do you see when a condo collapses like this?
I think there's going to be years and years of litigation. There's going to be negligence claims, wrongful death. And Kevin is absolutely correct. There will be claims against the association, but also there will be claims against the developers, the owners, the managers, anyone who had anything to do with the collapse of this building. And if they were negligent, meaning they owed a duty to the residents of this building, and we know for a fact that we're seeing reports where they're saying that there was damage to the property, it needed to be maintained, and clearly that was not done here. So there will be some recovery for sure from most of these individuals who are bringing the claims.
Yeah, at least some of these photos and videos seem to be starting the groundwork, sorry, no pun intended, for kind of developing what could be a very serious lawsuit. Now, Kevin, these seem like civil allegations that could be coming out of this case. Are there any potential for there being criminal liability, maybe recklessness or criminal negligence against some of these parties?
A grand jury has been convened, but I think it's highly unlikely that there would be any criminal liability. There was a building that collapsed in New York about a year ago, similar type of process, and no criminal charges has been brought forward in that particular case. But the one thing that's really important to realize here is we don't even know what caused this yet. Causation for either a civil or a criminal lawsuit is going to be extremely important. So unless somebody has an expert report that can establish what caused this, which nobody has yet, nobody really has any business bringing a civil lawsuit or bringing criminal charges until those investigations are complete.
Yeah, it sounds like you're bringing me back to my law school days of Paul's graph of but-for causation. Terry, any other insight that we can get into this collapse of the building that might give us an indication that civil charges may be coming out of this grand jury investigation?
Well, I think every time we hear about some notice that has been given to the parties involved, we know for a fact that they have breached some duty of care if they knew that there was an issue with the building and with the structure of that building. So when you hear reports about years ago, they gave them notification that there was a problem, that they knew that there was water, we're going to see lawsuits coming for sure.
All right, Kevin, thank you for lending your expertise here and kind of giving us the up and down as to what could happen in the Surfside condo collapse. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, are criminal charges looming against members of the Trump organization? But first, Lori Vallow Daybell indicted in the death of one of her husbands. Charles Vallow's warning to police about the now infamous Doomsday mom just months before he was shot and killed. Next. Welcome back. More legal trouble for Lori Vallow Daybell. A grand jury in Phoenix has indicted the so-called Doomsday cult mom on a conspiracy charge in the murder of her ex-husband. Angela Levy is here with new details about the bizarre case.
Yeah, Brian, Lori Vallow's brother, Alex Cox, told police straight up that he shot Charles Vallow in self-defense. Cox is now dead, and his sister is now accused and charged with conspiring with him to murder Charles Vallow. January 31st, 2020, Charles Vallow called police in Chandler, Arizona about his estranged wife, Lori Vallow.
She's just lost touch with me. I'm not me. She yells. She's unhinged.
Charles was trying to get a mental health evaluation for Lori. He said she had made threats.
She's had a break. She says, I'm Nick Snyder. I've taken over Charles's body. And Charles has been killed. I'm going to kill you. You're going to be murdered today or tomorrow.
Earlier that day, Lori Vallow and her daughter, Tylee Ryan, went to another police department to report that Charles had stolen her purse.
My friend that's a police officer, he said, go file a report, file a restraining order, all that stuff. I don't want to do all that stuff. I just wanted to be on record, and if you can get the purse back, that would be lovely, because all my stuff is in there. I'm really mad about my lip gloss.
Nearly 6 months later, police were called to a home Lori Vallow was renting by her brother, Alex Cox. Alex told police he had shot Charles.
He came at me with a bat.
Okay. Was he living here or
No.
visiting?
He came to pick up his son.
Okay, is the son inside?
No. My sister took him to school.
Lori and daughter Tylee would return to the home, Lori appearing to giggle at times on police body camera footage. 2 months later, Tylee and her younger brother, JJ Vallow, would go missing, leading to a massive search for the children. All eyes turned to Lori Vallow and her new husband, Chad Daybell, an author considered by many to be a cult leader. Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell are now charged with murdering Tylee Ryan, JJ Vallow, and Chad's former wife, Tammy. Lori has been deemed incompetent to stand trial.
I'm sure that if you ask the prosecutor, they would say that they are seeking justice for a victim and some sort of closure on behalf of the victim. Nonetheless, it sort of looks like a public relations endeavor when the truth of the matter is Lori Vallow will never see an Arizona courtroom until all of the Idaho charges against her have been conclusively resolved.
Jason Lamb practices law in Maricopa County, Arizona, where Lori Vallow Daybell now faces charges. Alex Cox died in December 2019 of natural causes.
It suggests that prosecutors have evidence from the investigation that the two of them conspired or agreed to commit the murder that's charged in this latest Arizona indictment.
Now, Lori Vallow Daybell is currently receiving mental health treatment in Idaho so she can be restored to competency. So her criminal case is right now on hold. Brian?
And Jeanette, let's bring in co-host Terry Austin for more on Lori Vallow Daybell's newest indictment. Terry, conspiracy to commit murder with a now deceased man, Alex Cox. How do you think that will work if this case does in fact go to trial?
It's not going to work very well, but I think what the prosecutors will do is point the finger to Alex. Clearly, he was the one who pulled the trigger. And we know for a fact that Lori Daybell was behind it as well. She was there. She told the police, and you saw in that clip that she was telling the police beforehand that Charles Vallow was really a problem and that she was okay and that the police didn't need to worry about any of the things that Charles Vallow was saying. But here, in fact, we see Lori's brother Alex shoot him, and it was not in self-defense. And finally, now we are seeing that the authorities are bringing charges against both of them. So I think the prosecutors will point the finger at Alex, even though he is a dead man, and they will still have evidence showing that he was the one who actually shot Lori Vallow's husband, Charles.
Yeah, I'm expecting some kind of text messages, phone calls, communication that they can show that agreement to make this decision to kill her ex-husband. And Jeanette, didn't police in the Phoenix area also review the death of another ex-husband of Lori Vallow Daybell?
Yeah, and she has 4 husbands, just in case our viewers don't know. Joseph Ryan, he was the 3rd husband, or really maybe the 2nd husband, but he died in 2018. And after he died, all of these things unfold. All of these people die, and then they're indicted for these other murders in Idaho with the children and Tammy Daybell. Well, then a tape surfaces where she spoke about wanting to kill Joseph Ryan. So they went back and they reviewed it. They just wanted to make sure they had all of their I's dotted and their T's crossed, and they determined yet again that that was a death of natural causes.
Interesting. Could have been a 3rd or I guess at this point 5th murder charge against Lori Vallow Daybell. We'll keep eyes on that case. Thank you both. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, former actor turned sex cult accomplice Allison Mack finds out how much time she's going to spend behind bars. Plus, Bill Cosby is out of prison. Why? Charges are now being dropped against the disgraced comedian after the break. Welcome back. Let's check in on some top legal news at the Law and Crime Network, including criminal charges expected against members of the Trump Organization. Sources say the Manhattan District Attorney's Office will likely file charges Thursday against former President Donald Trump's company and its chief financial officer. The Wall Street Journal first reported the expected charges, which are not expected against President Trump himself. The DA's office is investigating Trump's family business for alleged fringe benefits the company awarded to a top executive. The charges would be a first for the investigation into President Trump and his former dealings. Former Smallville actress Allison Mack has been sentenced to 3 years for her role in the sex cult NXIVM. A federal judge called Mack both a slave and a master to convicted cult leader Keith Raniere. Raniere is currently serving a 120-year sentence for a series of crimes, including forced labor, human trafficking, and sex trafficking. Prosecutors are now revealing Mack helped cooperate to bring Raniere down just a month before his trial. Mack produced a recording of the cult leader instructing her to hold a woman down almost like a sacrifice. We'll bring you more in the case tomorrow as one of the victims and whistleblowers joins Law and Crime Daily. And Bill Cosby is now a free man. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has issued an opinion vacating the disgraced comedian's conviction. Cosby's defense attorney successfully argued prosecutors violated his constitutional right. The first prosecutor overseeing the case had reached a non-prosecutorial agreement with Cosby if he agreed to testify in a civil lawsuit against accuser Andrea Constant in 2005. A new prosecutor brought criminal charges against Cosby in 2015 using those words against him. The Commonwealth's highest court ruled Wednesday that the previous agreement must be upheld and the 83-year-old cannot be retried. Cosby has always maintained his innocence. Now, Terry, from what I understand in reading the court documents, the state Supreme Court seems to have overturned the conviction based on the violation of Cosby's Fifth Amendment right. What did you make about this decision and the result?
Well, I think it was probably the right decision, but I think many people are going to be disappointed with the result, particularly the victims of Bill Cosby. So what the court did here is they said because of this non-prosecution agreement, Bill Cosby was promised that he would not have claims brought against him. And he said that, okay, then I will testify at this deposition and I will have immunity. That did not happen. Claims were brought against him. He was charged. And the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania said, no, you can't do that. You can't go back on this promise. And so they vacated the conviction. Right decision, but sadly, it was the wrong result.
I think many people will agree with you once they kind of dig deep into this opinion by the court. Thank you, Terry. Let's check in on what Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross is working on this week.
Thanks, Brian. Coming up this week on Brian Ross Investigates, new developments in a major story we first reported last month about allegations of sexual abuse and cover-up at a summer camp once thought to be one of the most wonderful camps in the country.
I said no countless times and eventually got so scared of him that I reported him directly to the camp manager.
Since our report, the CEO of the camp has now resigned and more steps are about to be taken. That's this week on Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network. Brian?
Thanks, Brian Ross. When we come back, we discuss the latest in Colorado vs. Mark Redwine trial, the testimony from the deputy who found Dylan Redwine's remains, and the phone call the father accused of murder made a day after his son went missing. Next. Welcome back. We're now hearing from a dear friend and former attorney to Robert Durst as the millionaire stands trial for the murder of his best friend. Robert Durst is accused of shooting Susan Berman in December of 2000. Berman was found dead in her California home with a bullet wound in the back of her head. Pre-recorded video testimony from Stuart Altman was played in court. Altman is a longtime friend and former attorney of the real estate heir. Altman says that in 2015, Durst told Altman that Durst shaved his head on purpose to show people the shunt installed to drain fluid in his skull. This testimony was played shortly after the prosecutor accused Durst of trying to get sympathy from the jury, which he passionately denies. Now on to Colorado, where a father is on trial for the murder of his 13-year-old son. Dylan Redwine went missing in November 2012 while on a court-mandated visit to his father, Mark Redwine. Dylan is said to have discovered explicit photos of his father dressing in women's lingerie and eating feces from a diaper. The teen's remains were found a short distance from the father's home in Colorado, and the skull was found 3 years after he went missing.
You receive information about items of evidentiary value on Middle Mountain.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
That there was a human skull found up the road from the dump site on Middle Mountain. And as he started to cross the drainage, his foot went in the water and he stumbled, and then he found the skull and he picked it up.
And what did you do?
Well, he picked it up and raised it over his head like this and yelled, "Skull!" And I laid my eyes on it and I just flew across the creek and I took it from him and I gently set it on the ground.
The deputy also testified to phone records she found during her investigation of Mark Redwine that showed he called his lawyer the day after his son went missing.
Were you able to isolate or identify a telephone number belonging to Mark Redwine's attorney?
Yes. So then I called her back again and I advised who I was, why I was calling her, and asked if she knew who Mark Redwine was. And she said, that she didn't feel comfortable talking about that.
Okay. Were you able to determine eventually that this was his attorney, excuse me?
Yes.
Now, Anjanette, the search for Dylan Redwine was huge, over 900 tips. Was this witness helpful in laying out where Dylan Redwine's remains were found?
Yeah, I think she was, and she gave a lot of detailed information. She went up to the map and she was showing what was found where and what they did on that search and the tips that were taken in. She said when she was if she ever made it to the witness stand in this case, she wanted to be able to say that they did everything that they absolutely could to figure out where Dylan was and what happened to him.
Yeah, definitely tried to get that sentiment across, but Terry, on the opposite side, the defense tried to poke holes in the investigation, maybe to suggest that it wasn't as thorough as the prosecution wants the jury to believe. How do you think that played out?
I don't think it played out very well. I think Tanya Goldbright and Daniel Patterson, the two investigators on the scene, did an excellent job. I think it was thorough. I think they roped off the scene the way they should have. The defense was trying to say that it wasn't roped off properly. Defense was trying to say the evidence wasn't collected properly. They were trying to say that it wasn't logged properly. And I think both of them testified that all of these things were done to the fullest extent possible. They didn't rope off the scene because they had to get down off the mountain because of the weather. And they did collect the property and they did identify it. So I definitely don't think that there were many holes poked into the prosecution's case.
Yeah, and that call to a lawyer is not looking very good right now, kind of consciousness of guilt. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.